Hari Om, dear students. Let us start our online class with the poem The Trees. This is the poem about trees, and the theme of this poem is about the conflict between the trees and the human beings. Human beings started using up the natural resources and especially the trees around him for his own development, and because of this the natural resources are becoming uh, decreased. They are becoming very less, due to which one or the other day the nature definitely will revolt against human beings, isn't it, children? So in this poem we are going to discuss about the nature's revolt with human beings. Adrienne Rich, she is the poet of our poem The Trees. You can see in the picture of Adrienne Rich here, she is a poet of The Trees, and she was an American poet, essayist and feminist too, and she was called as one of the most widely read and influential poets of the second half of the 20th century. That means in the 20th century, second half, most of her poems got more influential. Like her poems were very popular, and most of the people used to read her poems, and as well as she was also a not only poet but also a essayist and as well as feminist. Now let us start the poem. The trees inside are moving out into the forest. The forest that was empty all these days, where no bird could sit, no insect hide, no sun bury its feet in shadow. The forest that was empty all these nights will be full of trees by morning. So here the poet, she is saying that the trees inside are moving out into the forest. So the trees inside, in the sense here, the trees in the houses and around the houses where human beings, that means we started using the trees or the plants for the purpose of a decoration. We are just putting in a pots or in our garden, and we are just putting all those trees in our houses, isn't it, children? So these trees which are there in the inside in the sense in homes, are moving out into the forest. Why they are moving into the forest? Because the forest that was empty all these days. So all these days the forest was empty. Why the forest was empty here, children? Because the poet is saying that the forest was empty because of a human being. Human beings started using all the trees in the forest for different purposes, for the benefit of mankind itself. We human beings started using the wood, the trees in the sense the wood, for different purposes, like constructions of houses and many natural things. We started using up the trees for many purposes. Because of that the forest has become empty. Okay, and as the forest is empty, the trees inside are moving out into the forest. Okay, so here the poet, she is saying that the trees inside the house are moving out into the forest, as the forest is totally empty, because human beings started using, human beings have used up all the trees for different purposes, for his own benefit. Human beings started using the trees for his own benefit and development, where no bird could sit. Why birds could not sit there? Because when there is no tree, how can a bird sit? So here the poet says that no bird can sit on the tree and no insect hides. As there are no trees, how can a bird sit? How can an insect hide? Or how sun bury its feet in a shadow? How a sun can hide in the shadow of the trees? So all these things are not at all possible here, isn't it? Is that possible? The bird can sit on the tree, an insect can hide in a tree, or sun can bury its feet in a shadow when there are no trees in the forest? It is highly impossible. And because of there are no trees in the forest, the trees inside in the sense the trees in the houses are moving into the forest. And because of that, the forest that was empty all these nights till now the forests were empty. And but now as the trees are moving from houses, trees are moving from inside to the forest, sure for sure the trees, the forest will be full of trees by the morning. So that is what here the poet wanted to say. She says that the trees inside the house are moving into the forest because the forests are totally empty. Why the forests are empty here? As human beings started using the trees for all his own benefits, for his own development, his own purposes, he started using it. Since there are no trees in the forest, no bird can sit, no insect can hide, and no sun cannot bury his feet in the shadow of the trees. While all these things are not happening, the trees inside were not happy. The trees in the houses which we have kept for the decoration are not at all happy. That's why all the trees started moving from inside to the forest. So all these nights, these forests were empty. But by the next morning, the forest will be full of trees as all the trees are moving. All night the roots work to disengage themselves from the cracks in the veranda floor. The leaves twine towards the glass, small twigs stiff with exhaustion, lamp cracked bulbs shuffling under the roof like newly discharged patients, half dazed moving to the clinic doors. Children, here there are different words which definitely we should know the meanings, like see, disengage. What do you mean by disengage? And veranda, strain, twigs, stiff, cramped, half dazed. So if we should know the meanings of all these words, then only we can understand the meaning of this stanza. So once again I am reading this stanza, children. Do listen to it. All night the roots work to disengage themselves from the crack in the veranda floor. The leaves strain toward the glass, small twigs stiff with exhaustion, long crab bulbs shuffling under the roof, newly discharged patients, half dazed moving to the clinic doors. So now let us look at the meanings of these words, children. Yeah, the meanings of these words are disengage, get free, veranda, space right outside the house but attached to it, strain, make a lot of effort, twigs, the topmost part of the branches, stiff, hard, exhaustion, pressure, cramp, shrunk, bulbs, larger branches of the tree, shuffling, showing dragging motion without lifting feet, half dazed, half shocked, or half asleep. So these are the meanings, children. First, if you know this, then you can understand the meaning of this stanza very well. Okay, now let us go back to the explanation part of this stanza. All night the roots work to disengage themselves from the cracks in the veranda floor. So here, children, what decision the trees inside had taken? They thought to move away from the houses to the forest by next morning, isn't it? It is not that easily it can get up and walk away, isn't it? So there you can see a lot of roots here which are penetrated into the earth, isn't it? It is tough, it is not easy to walk away, just how human beings walk from one place to another place. It is not so easy to walk from one place to another place for trees, isn't it? So for that it has to do a lot of work. So all the night, that means throughout the night, the roots work to disengage themselves. That means the roots started to get free themselves from the cracks in the veranda floor. So in the veranda in the sense the place outside the house where the plants are planted, where these trees are planted. So in the veranda, the trees which were planted, the roots of those trees, they started disengaging themselves just to get free from the cracks of this land, and because of that disengaging, it gets free from the land, and even the leaves strain towards the glass, small twigs stiff with exhaustion. That means even the leaves of the plant or the tree here, they get strained towards the glass, and even the small twigs. What do you mean by twig here, children? The topmost part of the branch, isn't it? The small twigs with exertion in the sense with a lot of force, they'll be trying to pull themselves up. Long cramped buff shuffling under the roof. Totally the huge buff, the huge tree, it will be shuffling in the sense just moving heavily without moving the feet. They cannot move feet and move from one place to another, but they are shaking a lot that it should come out from the roof. It should come under the roof, like newly discharged patients. When they come out, the tree looks like a newly discharged patient, like the tree with the roots. If you just pluck a tree or the plant, then how does it look? Just it gets faint, almost weak, isn't it? So in the same way, it looks like a newly discharged patient. How patients look? They look very dull and pale, isn't it? So in the same way here, the tree looks like a patient, half dazed, in the sense half asleep or very weak, moving to the clinic doors. How the patients are moving towards the clinic doors to get discharged. In the same way here, the trees which struggled throughout the night, they have struggled and they try to loosen their roots from the what do we call veranda floor, and finally they got up and now they are moving, this thought of moving. So here the poet says that throughout the night the roots work to disengage themselves, to get free of themselves from the veranda floor, and all the parts of the tree like leaves and the twigs, everything, the buds, they give a lot of force of pressure, and because of that which is the tree comes out. And when it comes out, you know, it looks like the newly discharged patient who is walking towards the door of the clinic. Like in the same way, the tree is moving very dull, pale and half dozed, in the sense half asleep. I sit inside, doors open to the veranda, writing long letters in which I scarcely mention the departure of the forest from the house. The night is fresh, the whole moon shines in a sky still open. The smell of leaves and lichen still reaches like a voice into the rooms. So here the poet or the narrator or the writer, she is sitting inside her house and she kept her doors open towards the veranda and she was writing letter. What was she doing, children? She was writing letter by sitting in her home, by opening the doors towards the veranda, and in which I scarcely mention, scarcely in the sense hardly, she rarely mentions about the departure of the forest, or she's not writing about the departure of the forest from the house, like how the plants from her own house, how they are moving towards the forest. She is not writing about that. And that night is very fresh, and she could see the moon shining in the sky, which is totally open. That means it is not cloudy. It is not very cloudy, and she could see the moon shining, and the night was very fresh, and she was enjoying the um, full moon night. Okay, and she could even smell the leaves. Okay, and even lichen in the sense here, I see I have given you the meaning, patches on the trees. So she could smell all as these plants or the trees are uprooting themselves, and when they are moving, she could get a good aroma or nice smell of the leaves and lichen, and she's feeling that it was really a very good pleasurable and enjoyable night, where she could see the moonlight, and she could enjoy a good smell. And see, still when she was inside the home, and she was seeing all these things, and she could even hear the voice of the movement of the trees into her rooms when she was sitting in the room, and when she was doing all this writing the letters, and she's smelling of the good smell, and even just looking at the moon, and she could hear some movement, some voice of the trees which are moving. So this is what was happening when the trees are moving from inside to the forest. So what the poet is saying here, when she was sitting inside by opening the doors of the veranda and was writing a letter, she could see the moon in and as well as she could smell a beautiful delicious or good smell of leaves and lichen, and also she could hear the voice of the movement of the trees from the house to the forest. My head is full of whispers, which tomorrow will be silent. Listen, the glass is breaking. The trees are stumbling forward into the night. Winds rush to meet them. The moon is broken like a mirror. Its pieces flash now into the crown of the tallest oak. So here the poet is saying that my head is full of whispers. In the sense, she could hear many whispers. What do you mean by whisper here, children? Low hushing voice. Just when you want to say something in secrecy to someone, what do? You just whisper in there, which in the others' ears, isn't it? You just talk very slowly. That is called whispering. So here the poet's head is full of whispers, which tomorrow will be silent. So now she could hear a lot of whisperings, which will not be there tomorrow. Who is whispering in her ears now? Now the trees which are moving from her house, just she is feeling like the trees are whispering to her. The movement of the trees are just heard like the whisperings of the trees here. When the trees are from her house, when they are moving towards the forest, she could feel that movements of the sound made by the sound of the noise which was made by the trees as the whispering sound of the trees towards her. And she also feels that by tomorrow she cannot hear all this. Tomorrow it will be very silent. She could hear the full of whispers now, but tomorrow everything will be very silent, she says. And she also says, listen, the glass is breaking. That means because of the lot of a pressure which was kept by the trees to uproot themselves, even the glass of the house, the window glass of the house was breaking. So here the poet says that she's saying that listen, the glass is breaking because of the force which was kept by the trees to uproot themselves, and the trees are stumbling forward into the night. Stumbling in the sense walk unsteadily. So when these trees finally, when they have uprooted themselves by breaking even the glasses, now they are stumbling forward, like walking unsteadily, just moving here and there. As I said you that they are almost like the patients, newly discharged patients, how they will be very weak and moving unsteadily. So here the trees which were uprooted by breaking the glass and all the obstacles, they were moving very unsteadily towards the forest into the night, and winds rush to meet them. That means when the trees are going, automatically wind is also going to meet these trees. Wind cannot stay here, no. Always when there is where the trees will be, there itself the wind also will be, isn't it? So the wind is rushing towards the trees to meet them. And at this point of time, when the trees are moving away and when the wind is moving away, here the poet could feel that even the moon is looking like a broken mirror. So the moon is broken. She could see in the mirror that the moon is broken into pieces in the crown of the tallest oak tree. There was a tall oak tree, and here crown in the sense on the top of the oak tree. Okay, you can see here the oak tree. On the top of the oak tree, she could see the moon, which was almost looking like a broken moon. The moon is broken into pieces. Like, it is a feeling of the poet here. She says that the trees which were moving from inside to the forest, because of the forest which was totally empty, and which was made by human beings. We human beings have used up all the trees, and because of that the forests have become empty, and there was no place for the birds to sit, and insect, even not sun can hide. And all because of all these things, the trees in the houses, the trees inside, have decided to go out. And when they wanted to go out, they can't go out just like that, isn't it? They have the roots which were totally deeply inserted into the crust of the earth, the upper layer of the earth. They are penetrated into the earth. So it is not easy to move away. So throughout the night, when they have decided to go to the forest, by next morning they started shaking the earth and making the cracks into the earth, so that the roots can be uprooted easily. Finally, with a lot of pressure, like roots, trunk, leaves, and even the twigs have all of them have put lot of pressure, and with a lot of exhaustion, somehow the tree was uprooted just by breaking the wall. And here, when the whole process was happening, our poet was sitting in her own room, just opening the doors of the veranda, and she could hear the whispering sounds, the sound noise made by the trees. And she could also feel that the trees are moving, and from tomorrow, from the next day, she clearly knows that she can't hear all this sound. And in the crown of the oak tree, that is on the top of the oak tree, she could see the moon itself is looking like a totally broken into pieces. The previous night, like no, when this was happening, she could feel good smell of leaf and lichen, and she could see that the moon was pleasant. But when all these trees and wind was rushing towards the forest, she could feel that the moon was also broken into pieces, just like a mirror. How the mirror breaks into pieces, how the mirror was broken by the trees, here in the same way even the moon was broken into pieces, and she could see that moon from the crown of the tallest oak tree. Okay. Now look at the poetic devices which are used in this poem, children. So the first one is simile. Simile, the first one here is like newly discharged patients. So here the poet, she compared the trees which were uprooted, and when they are moving towards the forest, she compared the uprooted trees with the newly discharged patients who were almost looking like a pale, dull and weak. And next one is still reaches like a voice into the rooms. So the noise here made by the trees or the leaves or the roots, the voice which was made by the tree here while moving towards the forest, she compared that voice, that sound to a voice. Okay, some kind of voice into the rooms. And the next one is the moon is broken like a mirror. So here she compared the moon into a totally mirror which was broken, just to make ourselves understand towards the feeling of the poet here. And the next one is the imagery. Imagery is its pieces flash now into the crown of the tallest oak. Just it is an imagination of the poet, just it is used to make us imagine ourselves and understand. So the broken moon, it was almost seen from the crown of the tallest oak. Its pieces flash now. Whose pieces here? The moon's pieces flash now in the crown. So she could see the broken, like moon which was broken into pieces from the crown of the tallest oak. Just to imagine and understand, this phrase is used here. And coming to rhyming schemes, children, there is no rhyme scheme. This poem is written in totally free verse. Hope you have understood, children. So children, here the total theme of the poem is about the conflict between the human beings and the trees, where human beings have used up all the natural resources and the trees and everything for his own development, isn't it? His own purpose the human being started using, but one or the other day he should feel important that the natural resources are very important for the next coming up generations, for the next generations also. If not, if he continues to use in the same way, definitely one or the other day the nature will revolt. So this poem is an example of that. So when he hear the poet, when he hear the human beings use up all the trees in the forest, one or the other day the trees inside, that means the trees in the houses, definitely they move from the houses and definitely they make totally the forest full of trees. Because now as the forests were totally empty, here the birds couldn't find shelter, the insects couldn't find shelter, no bird can sit on the branches and no insect can hide, even sun cannot take a shade in the under the branches of the tree. And because of all these things, it is very peculiar, a different thing, isn't it? So all the trees decided to move to the forest in this poem. As per the words of the poet, definitely this will happen one or the other day if we don't look back and just try to save the natural resources. And it was totally about the feeling of the poet, how she was felt, how she could just see if there are no natural resources, what will happen to the mankind and what will happen to the trees. Hope you have understood this poem, children. If you have any doubts, please contact us so that we will clarify your doubts. Hari Om. Thank you.